Welcome to our class on the PODS framework. My name is Steve Burge, and I'm going to be your guide to one of the most exciting and useful plugins in the WordPress ecosystem. What PODS does is essentially allow you to create your own types of content, whether you are building a site for books, a site where you need staff members listed on your site, a site where you want to build a yellow pages, or really anything which is a little more complicated than simple posts and pages, then you're going to need the PODS framework. If you've installed several plugins on your WordPress site, you may start to notice that the left-hand menu gets a little bit crowded. What happens is the plugins create extra content types because they need to add extra features. We've added the WooCommerce plugin, which is a shopping cart, and you'll notice that they have products in the sidebar. That's a custom content type. You can add shipping, you can add tax, you can add the cost, you can add product images. It's essentially a much more advanced version of posts and pages. We've added an events plugin, and it's done the same thing. We've added a restaurant plugin. It does the same thing. If we added a directory plugin, that would make another new content type. However, all of those come predefined. If you add WooCommerce, it provides products with a certain set of features. If you add this events plugin, it adds events with a certain set of features. Restaurants, again, they come out in the same way. But what happens if you want to create your own content? Something unique to the needs of your site? Well, in the past you could do it, but it required some fairly complex coding. You'd have to dig down into your theme files. We're going to approach using the PODS framework without using hardly any code at all. The only code we're going to use is using some basic HTML code, and it's nothing more complicated than you can learn from the HTML videos we have here on this site. Using that little bit of code and using PODS, we're going to be able to create some really interesting content types, and we're going to be able to display and organize them in some really useful ways. So I hope you come with me, and I hope you enjoy using PODS as much as I do. Now that we know what PODS is capable of, let's go and see how PODS works. In the admin area of our WordPress site, we're going to go to Plugins and Add New. I'm going to search for PODS, and the first two plugins that come up in the search results are the ones that we're going to use. We're going to use the main PODS Custom Content Types and Fields plugin, plus we're going to use PODS Frontier Auto Template as well. That's going to allow us to get easy control over what PODS looks like on our site. So go ahead and install both of those. Now that we have both of those PODS plugins enabled, we're going to see a PODS admin link on the bottom left-hand side of our WordPress admin site. I'm going to go to add a new pod. Essentially, I'm going to add a new content type. PODS is going to give me the option on the left-hand side to create a new pod, to create a new set of new content type and a new set of fields, or on the right-hand side, it's going to give us the ability to manage an existing content type, such as posts or pages. I'm going to take the new option, and we're going to build an Amazon-style website. We're going to have a listing of books with the author, with the publisher, with the year it was published, with all the kind of information you might find on a book website, such as Amazon. The singular label is going to be book, and the plural label will be books. Then go ahead and click on Next Step. You'll notice immediately that books has appeared as an extra option in the left-hand side of the site here. There aren't any fields. The fields are what is going to make our new pod, you might say, much more interesting and much more useful for our site. For example, if we're looking at Amazon, we just mentioned some of the items that you would list for a book. Let's go ahead and show you how we're going to use those fields to add the more interesting information. On the right-hand side, click Add Field. And the first one that we're going to enter is going to be the publisher. And the description, in this case, we can leave blank, but the field type we're going to have a series of choices. We can enter a plain text field, a website link, a phone number, an email address. We can have a whole paragraph of text. We can enter a date, the time. There's a variety of different options that we can choose in here. We're going to start off with simply the publisher. So the publisher was fairly straightforward. We simply used a plain text field in that example. Let's go ahead and do that one more time. I'm going to click Add Field, and the label this time will be Book Author, and the name, as before, will be filled in automatically, and I'm going to choose plain text once more. Let's give you a third example. I'm going to go ahead and click Add Field, and this time the label will be Publishing Date, and from this list I'm going to choose the date. I'm going to click Add Field, and once this has been done, you can rearrange the fields if you'd like to. This is for the back end. These are the order of the fields that the person who's creating the content will see. As we'll see later, it's distinct from the order that people will actually see them when they visit the front of your site. Once you've added the fields that you want, and once you've ordered them as you want to enter them when you're creating books, go ahead and click on Save Pod on the right hand side. It's easy to forget this. If you don't click on Save Pod, your changes won't be saved. So we have created a new pod or custom content type, and we've added some specific fields to include the data that we want. We've set up a book, and now we can add the publisher, the publishing date, and the book author. What we're going to do now is control how we can present that easily and automatically to the people actually looking at the books we add to our site. To do that, we're going to use a feature called templates. It's disabled by default. We're going to click on Components under the Pods admin area, and there's going to be a whole series of more advanced Pods features in here. We're going to choose the Templates feature. We're going to click on Enable, and once it's enabled, Templates should appear as a drop-down under Components. So we have a new pod template called the Books template, and what we're going to do is actually reference the fields and the options that we have from our books. So on the right hand side, under pod reference, I'm going to select books, and it's going to suggest all of the different things that we can add to our template, from the book author to the publishing date to the publisher to the number of comments to the type of post to the actual author of the post or the title of the post. All of that's going to be available to us. We are going to have to write just a little bit of HTML, but to get started, let's show you how the template system works. We're going to use these squiggly brackets, I like to call them, and also the @ sign. And with the addition of those braces or squiggly brackets and the @ sign, we're going to get an automatic list of all the things we can add to our site. In this case, we've added the publisher, the publishing date, and the book author. So those are the three things that I'm going to add. There's publisher, and that is what is going to actually display the publisher on our site. It may make sense for me to add a little label before it. So the label publisher is then going to be followed by the actual publisher of the book. I'm going to go ahead and repeat that process. I'm going to add a label, publishing date, then the squiggly brackets or the braces, the @ sign, and then the publishing date. And then finally, the author, publisher, publishing date, and author. I mentioned that we may need to write just a little bit of HTML code. If we publish the template like this, the template will show in plain text. Basically, everything will be squished together. So I'm going to add just a paragraph tag around each of these so that they are separated when they appear on the page. And you can do far more sophisticated templates if you want to. You could add more HTML, you could add CSS in here. You can do whatever you wish, and you can add more details from the pod that you've created. But we're going to start off with a fairly simple example, and we're going to click Publish at that point. There's only one more thing that we need to do now in order to make it easy for people creating books to see the content when it appears on their site, and that's to connect this new books template to the books pod. So I'm going to go to Edit Pods. I'm going to click Edit next to Books, and remember back when we installed pods, we also installed a second plugin called the Frontier Auto template, and there's going to be a tab up the top provided by that plugin, and what we're going to do is enable automatic templates. So basically people don't have to do any work. It's going to be automatic. Every time they add a book, our books template is going to be used. Now it is a little frustrating. This doesn't fill in automatically. You do have to remember what you actually called your template. So check the box and then write in the name of the template that you've created, and you can decide whether the template appears after, before, or completely replaces the main content. I'm going to start fairly simply, and I'm just going to choose after, so it's going to appear underneath the main title and the body of the books that I create. And then finally, click Save Pod. Okay, so we have created a new pod for our books. We've added some specific fields, and using the templates feature in pods, we have placed those fields into the template, and then using the Frontier Auto template feature, we've actually connected the two together. So at least in our planning, whenever we add a book, our new books template is going to be used. So let's go ahead and see how this actually works for someone who's adding content. We're going to go to Books and Add New. And the book that I'm going to add is one of the most popular web books, Designing with Web Standards by Jeffrey Zeldman. One of the oldest books too. I'm going to take the title and place it in my normal WordPress title up there. And I'm also going to take a short copy of the description as well. There we go. Now we can see underneath that the fields that we've added to our pod are available in here. Publisher, publishing date, and book author. Let me go ahead and grab that information from Amazon too. And the publishing date of this edition was October 25th, 2009. And the book author was Jeffrey Zeldman, although technically I think he had a co-author. Perhaps we may have to customize the field later to make room for a co-author. So we have the basic book information in place, and I'm going to click on Publish to see what it looks like. Okay, so far so good. Let me go ahead and click on View Book. And there we have our custom book content. Our fields are nicely placed. We have everything that we need. Pods has been successful in creating a new custom content type with almost no code for us. If you take a look at the book that we've just created using pods, you may notice that we have some of our custom information, but some of the default features that you may expect with WordPress content is missing. We don't see any comments, and if we go to actually edit the book, you'll notice that on the right hand side we don't have things such as categories or tags or the featured image. And if you dig a little deeper, you'll see that we don't have revisions and quite a lot of other useful and key WordPress features. However, Pods allows us to add those back. What we're going to do is go to the Pods admin, and we're going to click Edit Pods, and we're going to click Edit next to Books. And let's take a look at some of these more advanced features, particularly under advanced options. This is going to give us quite a few really important options for our new pods. We can decide whether to make it public or whether to make it private by default. We can decide whether people can search for this content, and we can decide what the URLs are, or whether we can organize this content like pages into parent and child content. But perhaps the most important of all these settings is down towards the bottom. Down here, you can decide whether the author, featured image, the excerpt, trackbacks, custom fields, comments, revisions, all of those normal features you get with WordPress content should be added to our new books content type. Particularly something like comments would be useful. We want people to share their thoughts about the books that we've added. And then further down the page, we can add categories or link categories, a hangover from a previous version of WordPress, and tags. If we go ahead and we check some of those boxes, comments, revisions, particularly important, and if we save our pod, we can go back to books, edit the existing book, and we should see now that categories are available here, that comments and trackbacks are allowed, and featured image tags, that we have the normal feature set that we might expect from WordPress content. So those features can be turned on or off for each pod. So we have our books up on our site, and we've been able to add all of the features that we might normally expect with posts and pages. What we're going to do now is see if we can make our books look more interesting. At the moment we don't have an image, there's still some extra features lacking. Let's go back and take a slightly more advanced look at the process that we've been using so far, and let's see if we can make our books content more interesting than it is right now. So we're going to go away from our books, we're going to go back into our admin, into the pods admin, and I'm going to click Edit next to Books. What I'm going to do is add more fields. I'm going to start with the cover of the book so we can have an attractive image to sit next to the book right here. I'm going to click Add Field. I'm going to call this Book Cover, and out of the options for the field type, I'm going to choose File or Image or Video. This will give us access to the WordPress media library. And in addition to that, I'm going to allow the person submitting the book to include some reviews as well. In this case, we don't need a plain text option because that's going to give us just one single row. What we're going to be looking at is a paragraph, so someone might write several sentences about what they thought about a particular book. We can choose a plain text option, or we can choose a similar box but with the WYSIWYG or the visual editor with the bold, italic and underline buttons attached to it. There's also the code option if people want to insert code directly into a box, but for reviews in this case we're going to choose the WYSIWYG option right there. And let's go ahead and also add the cost of the book as well. That's going to be an important option for a lot of people. There we go. And if we want to, we can rearrange these, but that's not so important. What will be important is actually modifying the template so that these new fields will show to people that are looking at the books once they've been added. So now that we've added those extra fields, we can rearrange them here, but that's not going to be quite as important as actually going to our templates again and adding these new fields to our books template so that people can actually see the new fields when they look at the books on our site. Before we leave, don't forget to click on Save Pod. I've seen quite a few people add fields and get things set up correctly and then leave without clicking Save. So don't forget to click Save Pod before you leave. Then go to Components and Templates. and I'm going to click Edit next to Books template here. First thing I'm going to do is actually add those new fields to the page. I'm going to have a whole variety of options for the book cover. WordPress ships with a thumbnail, a medium, or a large option. So we can resize all of the book images automatically if someone happens to upload a particularly large image. In the template, if we choose one of these predefined sizes, WordPress will take care of resizing it for us. I'm going to choose the large option right there. Okay, we added the book cover. I'm going to add the cost as well. And we also added the reviews as well down there at the bottom. So let me go ahead and place those on the page. Okay, at the moment, if you remember, without any HTML around them, they're just going to flop onto the page. So for some of these, I might just be happy to add a paragraph tag. For example, that should work fine for the cost of the book, and I can add that up there with the other items. If I want to make it stand out, I could go ahead and add an extra HTML tag, in this case strong, to the labels so that they stand out more clearly. For the reviews, what I could do is wrap them in a paragraph tag, of course, but I can use the reference fields, the reference items that Pods provides to do something a little more sophisticated. I'm going to add a H3 HTML heading, and I'm going to start off by saying reviews of, and then I can automatically pull in the title of the book that we're going to be reviewing right there. Now we also have the image to deal with as well. Now we're going to get a URL from here, so we are going to have to do a little bit of HTML to make this image actually show in our template. I'm going to do img src equals, and that should show the image on the page. If I want to, I can use a similar technique to the one that I used for the reviews to add some useful data to the image. For example, if I want to automatically add an alt tag, or the text that will show if the image is hiding, I can do it like this. And maybe to complete the alt tag, I can add a little bit of extra text around it. And then finally, maybe I can align the image so that it'll push to one side of the page where the labels and the reviews are going to be on the left. So I'm going to place that at the top of the page, so the image will hopefully be on the right and the information about the book will be over there on the left. Okay, so far so good. I'm going to click on Update, and I'm going to add a second book to the site to see what my new fields and new template look like. I'm going to go to Books, to Add New, and this time I'm going to use another popular web design book called Don't Make Me Think, which is about how people use websites and how we can make them more usable. So there's the title. Let me grab a short part of the description right there. The cost of the book is about $30. And I'm going to borrow the image from Amazon right here. And we're going to see a add file option here for the book cover. I can add it just like almost any other image. There it is. Click on add file, and there I have the space for the reviews underneath as well. There is one review on Amazon.com for this book. Coincidentally, it's the author of the other book that we just added to our site a few moments ago. So I can add in a review there. Let me go ahead and click on publish, and we'll see what our new books content type looks like with new fields and our new template. So this is what our book looks like when it's published on the site. You can see that all of our fields have come out correctly, and our review with the automatically created title appears correctly as well. The image on the right hand side is perhaps a little bit too big. We could solve that in a couple of ways. Either we can add more fields to take up this space. We could go back to our pods template, and we could change the automatic resizing of the image from large to perhaps medium or thumbnail so that it fits into the design of this page more neatly. But I hope you agree that our new books pod is looking distinctly more interesting and also distinctly more flexible than it did if we tried to create this using a page or a post using a normal WordPress content type. Now that we've added at least a couple of books and an author to our site, you may notice one thing. It's not actually possible to see the books and the author on our site. What we need to do is figure out some way to actually present the books and the authors to the world. What we're going to do in order to show our books and our author on our site is use another feature of the pods framework that is particularly useful. Normally, if you're building a WordPress site, a lot of the top level menu items are going to be pages, and that's what we're going to use. We're going to use a page to show the books and any other items that we want to in a kind of blog format on our site. I'm going to go to our pages. I'm going to go ahead and click on add new, and I'm going to call this new books, because what it's going to show us is simply the new books that have been added to the site. There is a pods icon just there over the top of the editor. Go ahead and click on this, and it's going to create a pods shortcode that we can use to place content into this page. Inside the pop-up item, there's going to be a variety of things we can do. We can show a single pod. For example, we could take a book and place it in multiple other places on the site. We could show multiple pod items, which is what we're going to do, or we can start to pull individual fields from individual pods. We could show a form so people could create new pod items. But what we're going to do is list multiple pod items. We're going to get a choice of the pods that we've created, authors, book genres, or books. And we can choose the template that we're going to use. I'm going to go ahead and choose the books template in this example. It's not going to work perfectly, but it's going to give us an idea of what we need to fix in order to make it work. A little bit further down the page, you can see limit, order by, and where. These features are going to require a little bit more research and a little bit more digging, but they will give you some more advanced options as to how you can output your content. For example, limit, you could set this to 5, and that will simply show 5 books. Set it to 15, and you'll show 15 books on your site. Order by allows you to sort the output based on certain fields. For example, you could sort by author, descending, or author ascending, and so that will sort the content based on alphabetical order, either descending, A to Z, or ascending, Z to A. I would recommend that if you want to dig further into using essentially what are database queries here to show your content in more unique ways, I would head over to the Pods website at pods.io, where they have a lot of details on exactly what you can do with the shortcodes that we're creating right now. They have a page on shortcodes in their documentation. Documentation is a top-level link, and you can find more information on how to run these extra queries. We're going to use our fairly simple example right now. We're going to click on Insert, and you'll see the shortcode placed into the page. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Update, and I'll go ahead and view the page. So there we have Designing with Web Standards, and there we have Don't Make Me Think underneath. You'll notice that one thing is missing. At the moment, we don't have the title of those books. That's because we're using the books template that we used for individual pages, and the title was already provided. So in order to make these look really good, what we're probably going to do is choose only some of these items rather than the full content with the publisher, the publishing date, the author, the cost, the image, the reviews, and everything else. And we're going to make a shorter and simpler template that we can use for blog pages, and we'll include the title. So a very quick view of what that will look like. We'll go to our dashboard. We'll go to the Pods admin. We'll go ahead and click Templates. And we have the author template and the books template. What I'm going to do to make this easy is click Edit, and I'm going to copy and click Add New, and I'm going to paste that into there. And I can remove an awful lot of these items, and I can also add the title. And this is going to be at least an H2 tag, I would say, at the top of the page. So pulling down books to use as a reference, there we have post title, and if we wanted to, we could also do something else like this. We can include the title and the author in the heading. So what we actually are producing for the blog is going to be distinctly different from what we show on the main page for each book. So I'm going to call this Books Blog Template, and if I go ahead and click Publish, then I can go back to Pages. I can edit new books, and I'm going to change this from Books Template to Books Blog Template. I'll click Update and click View Page. And now we have the title, we have the publisher, the publishing date, and we have the book underneath with the title. And if you remember the GUID trick that we used to make a link earlier, what we could do is go back to our Books blog template, and using the GUID item, we could place a link around the titles so people could click through. But hopefully what you've seen here is that it's relatively easy to place Pods items onto a page using this shortcode, and it also ends up being considerably more flexible than some of the things you can do with posts and pages without the help of the Pods framework. And if you do want to finish this process off and actually make it easily visible for people to see these books, you can add it to the menu. If we go to the dashboard, if we go to Appearance and Menus, it's just going to be a normal page, we can click it as add to menu, we can click save menu, and new books should be visible as a menu item on our site. So over the last few videos, without using more than just a few little HTML tags, we've been able to create a new content type, and we've been able to create custom fields, and we've been able to build our own mini little version of Amazon on our WordPress website. But I'm sure nearly all of you have been to Amazon.com and you've realized that they have many different things on their site. And if we are going to build a site of any size, we're going to run into some limitations fairly quickly. For example, if we have books and movies and clothes and all the other millions and millions of things that Amazon has, then our categories and our tags are going to be overwhelmed fairly quickly. We could try and shoehorn our books categories, our clothes categories, our movies categories, our shoes categories, all into the one category or the one set of tags. But it's going to end up being pretty confusing and pretty hard to manage. What Pods allows us to do is create a whole new set of categories or a whole new set of tags specifically for books. Let's go ahead and see how that works. We're going to be able to divide our books into things such as fiction or non-fiction, history, science, technology. We're going to be able to create book genres and actually add them to the books that we have on our site. So we're going to go back to something that we did really early in this class. We went to the Pods admin and we clicked Add New, and we had a choice between creating something new or extending something that was already on our site. What we're going to do is click on Create New, and we're going to create a new way of organizing our content, or more specifically, a new way of organizing our books. We're going to go ahead and click on Create New. Earlier we chose Custom Post Type, and we created a custom post type for books. This time we're going to choose Taxonomy. Now, a taxonomy can be a confusing word. I've often heard people get confused by this word. Someone once said, "Is it where you stuff dead animals?" No, that's taxidermy. This is taxonomy. Taxonomy is basically a very unusual word for how you organize things, such as categories or tags in the WordPress example that we see here. I'm going to choose Custom Taxonomy. The singular label will be book genre, and the plural book genres. Then I'm going to go ahead and click on Next Step, and really I don't need to do too much here. Now, I could customize it. I could add extra fields to it if I wanted to get more detailed, but really the most important thing I need to do is click on Advanced Options, and down where it says Associated Post Types, I can go ahead and associate my book genre taxonomy with books. Now, if I click on Save Pod, that'll be saved, and under Books on the top left, I now have book genres as an option. So now I can come in here, I can enter the different genres, history, technology, fiction, non-fiction, and this will operate in a very similar way to categories and tags, but it'll be completely customizable, and it'll also be cleanly distinct from all the other categories and tags that I have on my site. Now, if I go back to my books, and if I edit one of the books that I have, we should see under categories and tags that I can add my book genres directly to the books that I have on my site. It may make sense at this point to go back to pods, to edit the books pod, and actually remove tags and categories from my books, but that's a choice that you may want to make depending on how integrated you want to make your books with the rest of the site. If you allow the categories and tags to remain, then you can cross-categorize your posts, your pages, and your books. Now it's time to introduce you to one of the features of pods that we've seen very briefly, but is going to be particularly useful for doing more advanced types of content on your site, and also more advanced types of fields. This feature is called relationships, and I'm in the pods admin. I'm editing the pod. I'm editing the books pod that we created at the beginning of this class, and I'm going to go ahead and click on add field, and underneath plain text and plain paragraph text and the WYSIWYG and the date and those other items that we've seen earlier, there's a field called relationship at the bottom. Now, there's a variety of things that we can do here. One fairly simple and fairly useful example that you may use for quite a few different fields is a drop-down choice. This is the one that comes by default. Once I chose relationship, it provided a simple custom-defined list as the first choice. When it comes to books, one very simple option we could do is allow people to choose between paperback, hardback, and ebook. So when someone comes to add the book to the site, they can choose from those three different options. However, it is possible to do a much more sophisticated relationship as well. I'm going to go ahead and click on add field and choose relationship, and you can choose from a variety of things to link to automatically. You can automatically link to other books, to pages, to other posts, to users on your site. This opens up the rest of your WordPress site to be linked to in this case. So what I'm going to do is take you through the example of the author. So we have two famous authors with books on the site already. What I'm going to do is actually create the ability to link from a book to information about the person that wrote it, and vice versa. So we can have an author page and we can have a list of their books that they've written attached to it. So we're going to use the relationship setting, but in order to do that, we're going to walk through another simple example of setting up a pod. So I have my book type down there at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and click on Save Pod. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set up a pod for authors. So I'm going to go to Pods Admin, Add New, and I'm going to go ahead and click Create New, the singular label, author, and the plural label, authors. Next step, and I'm going to go ahead and click Add Field and add a couple of pieces of information about each author. I'm going to add the ability to have a photo of the author using the file, image, video field type, and I'll go ahead and click Add Field, and I'm going to go ahead and add a little bio field as well. Now, this may seem a little redundant. It may be that we could put the bio inside the main body, but it is possible to actually disable the main body if we want to, and this may give us more control over our pod. What we can do is save the pod, and under Advanced Options, if we scroll down, we can uncheck the editor box. Now, that's a little confusingly named because it's the same as some of the user roles on the site. But if we uncheck that, that's going to remove the big main normal body that we see. We'll be able to see exactly what that looks like when we go and create an author in a couple of minutes. So I'm going to save the pod, and we have the photo, we have the bio. I'm going to go ahead and set up the template. I'm going to go to Components, Templates, and basically we're walking through another example of creating a pod. Click Add New. Author template. And on the right hand side, I'm going to select the pod to use as a reference, Authors. There we go. Title, content, and then the photo and the other information available on the right hand side. Okay, there's the photo. Maybe this time I'll choose the medium size option. Okay, there's the bio, and I'll wrap that in a paragraph tag right there. What I need to do is what we did earlier with the book's cover image. I need to use just a little bit of HTML in order to get the author photo to show on the site. I'll add IMG, SRC, and I'll also do the alt tag as well. And that should automatically create it. If I want to do the title as well, that will actually show on the page, and so I'll be able to see whether this is working correctly without looking at the source code. So we have the alt tag and we have the title tag for the image as well. And as with the book, I'm going to align this image to the right. Okay, so far so good. Click Publish. And if you remember back, what we need to do is actually tie this author template to the author pod. So I'm going to go to Edit Pods, click Edit next to Authors, and under Frontier Auto Template Options, I can check the box at the top and enter the name of the new template that I've created there. So we have authors available here. I'm going to click Add New. And I'm going to enter Jeffrey Zeldman. He was the author of the first book that we added to the site. Now we're creating our author. You'll notice that the editor area has completely disappeared. When we went to the pods admin and we edited our author and we unchecked the editor box, we removed the main area completely. This gives us a little more flexibility. With the bio area, we can have more control over exactly how many characters are entered. It doesn't make a huge difference, but it does give us a little bit of added control. So what I'm going to do now is head to Google, and I'm going to grab an image for Jeffrey Zeldman's photo, and I'm going to grab a short bio as well. Okay, so a quick Google search for Jeffrey Zeldman produces some images that I can borrow, and it also produces a little biography from Wikipedia that I can borrow as well. So on my author page for Jeffrey Zeldman, I can click Add Photo. I can borrow that image, and I can enter the bio inside there. So far so good. If I go ahead and click on Publish, I should be able to see my new author profile page on the site. What I'm going to do to complete this process now is actually see if I can link these items together. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard, I'll go to the pods admin and edit the pods. And I'm going to edit the authors pod. And I'm going to click add field. And the label that I'm going to choose in this case is books written. There's a few other ways to say this. We could call it bibliography, for example, but this essentially is going to be a list of the books that he's written. And for the field type, I'll choose relationship. And when it comes to related to, I'm going to choose books because those are the things that we're going to want to choose from. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and click add field. I'm going to go ahead and click save pod. And as you may be familiar with now, the final step that we need is to actually add that new field to our template so that people can see the content. So I'm going to go to components and templates. I'll click edit for author template. Let me go ahead and do the same H3 trick that we used before. I'll say books written by, and I'll automatically pull in the post title there. And you'll see that from the content that's being pulled in, there's a whole variety of content. I'm going to choose the post title, but it's possible to automatically pull in the actual content, the date, and all sorts of other content from the books that he's written. So let's go ahead and save that now that we have some example content being pulled in automatically from the books. Now I'm going to go back to authors. I'm going to edit Jeffrey Zeldman, and where it says books written down at the bottom, I can choose automatically from the books that I have on my site. He wrote Designing with Web Standards, so I can go ahead, click Update, click View Author, and there we go. There's one of the items that he's written. What I could do is go back to my template and pull in the actual URL and make this an active link so that if I click on Designing with Web Standards, I actually go to the page about the book Designing with Web Standards. What I would do if I wanted to actually add a link dynamically to this is, of course, go back to the templates and add the link as we added the image using just a little bit of advanced HTML. So if I go back to the template, what I'm going to do here is pull in, and this is a little bit counterintuitive, and the name is not quite as straightforward as some of the other items. We're going to pull in the GUID. That's basically going to be the permalink or the URL, and this is what we'll do. We're going to add a href, and we're going to add a link that's going to be around the post title, and then we'll close it off, and that should do the trick. This tag here is going to automatically pull in the URL, which is going to link to the book that Jeffrey Zeldman or any of our other authors has written. If I click Update, and if I go back to the author page, it should now be automatically linked. And there's Designing with Web Standards. So we've now managed to add an active link to the books that are being pulled in for Jeffrey Zeldman. If I click on Designing with Web Standards, it's going to take me to the page about the Designing with Web Standards book. One thing to notice before we close is that fields that we haven't filled in will still appear on the page. We would need to write some slightly more complicated code using PHP to hide fields if they're empty. One easy solution is to make them all required, but we added the cost and the reviews and the book image for the second book, but we didn't add it for designing with web standards. So we'd have to go back and fix this. But hopefully the process we've gone through here is going to give you a good indication of what's possible with pods. Not only can you create multiple custom content types with their own taxonomies, basically their own categories and tags, but you can start to use them in an interlinked way using the relationships field. So as we reach the end of this class, let's do a quick recap and see what pods was able to allow us to do. To begin with, we were able to create a new content type called books, and we're able to add specific fields to it. And using the pod settings, we're able to decide which WordPress features, such as comments or the main editor or categories or tags, we could use for our books content type. Then, using the templates feature in pods, we're able to take the fields and the information for our new books content type, and we're able to lay them out using just some basic HTML on a page, so that when we went to the books content type and added new books, the fields that we created were automatically added to the page, and they were laid out in the way that we wanted, using just a few HTML tags. And then we could go back to the pods admin and we could create a new taxonomy. In this case, we created book genres, and we were able to categorize and organize the books on our site according to history or technology or fiction or non-fiction. And then finally, using the pods shortcode, we're able to lay out our books using our own template again, and it was almost as if we had our own more sophisticated version of pages and posts, but customized for our site. In fact, that's a good description of what pods can do. It allows you to go beyond the fairly basic and fairly standard posts and page layout to create something that is unique and particularly useful for your site. I hope you enjoyed the class, and I hope you enjoy using the pods framework.